everybody. We know that the timing is perfect to do this video because the fridge noise just shut off. So welcome, or if you're new, my name is Delian. This is the channel where we explore becoming the main character of our own stories by getting more self-acceptance, having more self-awareness, and then creating real self-authorship so that we can create and live the story we want to for ourselves. And we do that by diving into things like astrology, the Enneagram, and more to come. So first things first, puppy is sleeping. So if you hear snoring, that's what's happening. Second, I threw out the question I threw out a post both in the Facebook group and then here on YouTube, and got lots of messages and comments about what things you guys were interested in hearing about. And one of the common questions, well, first of all, it was going to be a Q&A video. And all of your questions are way too deep for me to do a Q&A. I was like, that would just be a video that was forever long. And so I'm taking your questions, and they've inspired a whole bunch of videos, which I am thrilled about. And today I'm going to be answering one of those questions that came up many times, which was how to approach retrograde planets in your chart. So what I will do is I will give you my overview of how I look and think about retrogrades, and then go through each of the planets and what those retrogrades can look like. I'm not going to go through each of the planets and the signs. I've had videos where I've done that, so go check those out. But you can get a sense for if you have a retrograde planet and you go listen to one of those videos where you listen to your planet's placement, and you can get a sense for incorporating these two things together. And of course, if that's difficult, you can always message me and book a reading. I love doing readings so much, and I can essentially just share with you what I see. All right. So first things first, planets, when they're moving through the sky, at times look like they're going backwards. They're not actually going backwards. It's just something interesting that's happening to how we see the sky. And when that's happening, the idea is that energy is like kind of getting slowed down. There's tension potentially with it, but it's like instead of moving outward, that energy is now kind of going inward or slows down. So that's the way that I think about it. When I think about how astrology works, this is my theory. This is the metaphor I use because it makes my heart happy. But I believe that all of the planets and all of the things are sending out energetic signals, and I think of it as music. And each planet has a certain song that it's sending. And at the time of your birth, depending on where those planets are in the sky, there's a certain song that all of them make that hit you the moment that you breathe in your first breath of air. And I think this is how the energetic imprint happens. And therefore, you are a specific song of the universe. That's the metaphor I like thinking about. So depending on what's going on with those planets, depending on where they are, they'll make certain notes together. And if something's retrograde, the way that I think about it is that it's the planet doing something where it just either the note takes a little longer to get to you, that there's a type of friction point with that note when it enters your system. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I actually think that if you have a lot of retrograde planets, the chances that you had to develop those things early on in life are higher. I do often think that it means that there was probably some acute difficulty in that area at a younger age that you had to face and get stronger in because of it. So those are the sorts, because I like looking at astrology through the lens of it being empowering. And I think retrogrades are simply saying like, this is something you get to do extra strength training in. So with that, I'll go through each of the planets, and I cannot promise I'm going to go in any specific order. I'm going to let the music carry me. Okay, let's start with Mars. because it's jumping to get out in front. So Mars is the planet of energy, the planet of movement, the planet of that spark of life, feeling alive and energized and excited and adventurous, all of those sorts of things. If it's retrograde, what I instantly read is that you've had possibly some difficulties around energy management. You might have big highs and big lows, or you at a young age had to go through something that was difficult around your energy system. So maybe you felt really depleted, or maybe you got shamed about how energized and excited you were for life. And what I tend to see is that the conversation that you're having with yourself around your Mars retrograde is going to be about developing a healthy, balanced relationship with your energy system. Obviously, depending on where your Mars is in your chart and what's happening in the conversations with all of the other planets, that has a big impact. Let's just say that your Mars is trine your moon. Well, your emotions might be a really good way for you to be able to get in touch with your energy. That's a conversation that's happening a little bit more naturally. But if it's squared Saturn, which is mine, then there might be some real need to figure out how to create structure so that your energy can thrive. And there might be like a difficult tension for some of your life where that's hard to figure out. I once had an astrologer tell me, and I will never forget it, it's exactly how I felt for a good portion of my life, is that you feel like you have your foot fully on the brake and fully on the gas at the same time for a Mars and Saturn tension point. So those are the other things to start thinking about, but we're talking about retrogrades here. Mars retrograde is going to be something about you having some blockage around how you access your energy. Again, it could be going to like feeling like it's so much, too much, that you over rely on this huge source of energy you have, and then like that it's gone. Or it could be something like it's even hard to feel like you can get yourself revved up. And again, this is not I really don't look at retrogrades as like, this is where you're stuck. It's more of, this is something you're here to develop. It's something where you're here to give a little extra attention to. And when we do that, we become even stronger in those areas than somebody who didn't have to go through that friction. That's how I look at it. But it will have something to do with feeling some kind of restriction or imbalance around your energy. All right, let's move into Mercury. This is the planet of communication, your voice, like how you get your ideas from here to out into the world via the written word or the spoken word. If Mercury is retrograde, this is usually, every time I see this, I think, okay, this person felt possibly like their voice was suppressed in early life, that they didn't get a say. They could actually have had speech impediments, like things like having to get over a stutter or losing their voice, or actually having something around. Sometimes I've noticed like Mercury retrograde can be a narrative that they got at a young age where they weren't very smart or that they were behind their peers. So those sorts of things are what come up when I look at a Mercury retrograde. And again, you can go and look and see what's happening with your other planets and see if there's any other parts of you that end up supporting this area, or noticing if they're intertwined and how you can use both of them to empower you in bringing up your expression, choosing to use your voice in a way that's empowering and embodied, being able to realize that your ideas are valuable. All of those sorts of things are going to be extra important for you to learn in this lifetime with a Mercury retrograde. I often see that people who have Mercury retrograde actually develop the ability to speak and share thoughts from a very empowered space, because they like not being allowed to express yourself, not having a say is very debilitating. And when you experience that, I think what happens for a lot of Mercury retrograde people is they learn the lesson of getting their voice, then they want to empower everybody else to also use their voice. And so they end up using their voice to lift up other people to be able to use their voice as well. And I love that. It also could be that you might have some friction around letting yourself create. It might be something where you think that you can't write, or that you're not creative enough, especially like in terms of getting the like you might feel like you're really creative, but you don't feel like you can like actually present it. Those are sorts of things that you may have had to deal with at a younger age more acutely than somebody who had Mercury not retrograde or any kind. These sorts of similar things can happen with tensions with other planets. So that's something to consider. And I'll be doing some videos where I go through how I read a chart. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Hopefully you'll get some insights there. Okay, anything else about Mercury retrograde? I think that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Let me know if you have Mercury retrograde, if this has been your experience. I often tell people, like, you'll know you're out of alignment with your own life if you lose your voice. Like literally with a Mercury retrograde. It's there to signal to you when you're living in a narrative that's not right for you, because it's so connected to your voice and your thoughts. Okay, let's go into Venus retrograde. So this is usually somebody who feels like they aren't allowed to experience the pleasures of life, somebody who doesn't feel like they're able to advocate for themselves at a young age, somebody who feels like there's a, how do I want to say this? Like there's a inability to enjoy life because they themselves didn't feel like they were supported or able to be equal. Like their pleasure wasn't something considered important. And so that's something to be on the lookout for. Also, when you, in listening to all of this, you can go and see, I was just looking to see if Venus happened to be in retrograde now, just based on how I was feeling about this. No, it's not. October 3rd is when it goes retrograde. These are things to think about for transits as well. You can start realizing that these are the sorts of things that may be coming up for you when a planet is in retrograde, as in transiting, not just in your natal chart. So Venus retrograde is like not feeling like you have access to being able to experience your own value system. Like maybe you feel like you have to outsource your value system to someone else, or that your only value comes from a relationship. These are all sorts of themes that I tend to see with a Venus retrograde. But really high on that list for a retrograde Venus is really not thinking that you yourself are valuable. And that's really hard. Like there's a lot of like having to do some inner work about making sure that you are the love of your life is a lot of things that I see for a Venus retrograde. Okay. Just because I was thinking about it now, let's do Chiron retrograde. If you have Chiron retrograde, which Chiron is the wounded healer, if it's retrograde, chances are you had to face that wound quite young, that there was no avoiding it. It was in your face. And this is essentially going to be like where the wound would have been a big part of your childhood experience, is something I've noticed. It's also, to me, indicative that you are here to really, like everybody's here to do work on their Chiron. But when I see a retrograde wound, Chiron, I tend to see somebody who is absolutely here to do that healing work and to show us. And I see those people as more likely to be teachers in that area. So like if you have Chiron retrograde in Scorpio, I would say that the chances of you having experienced some sort of psychological distressing things when you were younger, which then made you have to figure out how you worked, why you worked, what was going on, why did those people cause harm, all of those sorts of things may be a drive for you. And then as you gather all of that information, do that inner healing, you have something deeply valuable to share with the rest of us, that ends up, I think, being something that you naturally are, people are drawn to you for that, the teaching of your, how you got through your Chiron wound. Yeah, this one in particular, whenever I see it, I'm just very, very aware that childhood traumas seem to go up, and or that placement for you was very acute, and that there's a possibility that there was like, you couldn't really even engage in like living the way authentically until you dealt with this, is often sort of the themes that I see with a Chiron retrograde. Yeah, I like it. Okay, let's do, who wants to go next? Jupiter wants to go next. Jupiter retrograde, what I see is that early in life, you may have felt very, very, very stuck. Like, what's that? There's that Lindsay Lohan movie with Chris Pine where like she's super, super lucky and he's really unlucky. And then accidentally one day, like she gives him her luck and then she's suddenly really unlucky. Like the unlucky person, like you almost feel like you have unlucky syndrome if you have Jupiter retrograde. This is like the things that I would see, and like check out where your Jupiter is. I think I just said Mercury. I didn't mean to. Jupiter retrograde. Go see where Jupiter is. Like if it's in Sagittarius, it's going to feel like you're unlucky in that area. However, because astrology is empowering, to me, what I see is actually somebody who had to face that kind of restriction in that area. So again, Jupiter in Sagittarius could be somebody who felt like they weren't allowed to leave their actual home environment, or they weren't allowed to travel. They felt like they were confined. And because they experienced that so acutely, they know what freedom is in big ways. And because if you /win, because when I see retrograde, I see somebody who's usually like, the universe said, we got to deal with this. You're not getting past it. Like, this is something you have to move through and strengthen. Otherwise, you're going to not have the life you want. In ways where other people, it's just a little bit more like easeful. That's all. But when you go through it, you are stronger for it. So Jupiter retrograde, when you lean into the truth of that placement, and if you haven't already, go check out the Jupiter video I did. Check and see what the narrative is for your life philosophy, and notice if your Jupiter is retrograde, whether or not you really experienced the opposite of that life philosophy early in life, which is why you may have grasped and leaned on and saw the value of the true life philosophy that you're here to grasp based on your Jupiter placement. That may have happened for you very clearly because you're like, this other stuff's not working. Because remember, Jupiter works in extremes. And when Jupiter is retrograde, it's extreme. And so look at where your Jupiter placement is and notice if, again, let's just say Jupiter was in Cancer, retrograde Cancer. You may have experienced extreme things happening in your home environment. Maybe you made massive moves when you were quite young, or maybe you had a big big thing happen in your family dynamic at a very young age, maybe a loss of a parent, or having to just something in the family dynamic that was like really imprinted on you at a young age that made you feel or think that you were unlucky in that area. And because of that experience, how I see it when I do a reading is that you are probably somebody who is like, okay, what do I need to do in order to move from this space into this strong place of believing essentially the opposite of whatever the wounded narrative that may have happened because of that scenario. And again, whenever I see Jupiter retrograde, I just see that there may have been serious highs and lows, and especially early life in whatever area your Jupiter is in. And because of that, you got very strong. That's just how I look at it. Okay, what's next? I feel like somebody just like yelled something. Let's just do Pluto retrograde, since I did the Pluto video yesterday. Whew. That got heavy fast. Okay. Pluto retrograde is essentially somebody who did not believe or feel like they were allowed to access their deep, dark space, or that there was intense shame around who they were on the darker parts of themselves. And again, I said this in the Pluto video, darker does not mean bad, it just means unseen. And so those parts of you that you felt like could not be seen, you had a lot of shame around potentially. I think that if you have Pluto retrograde, the chances that you had a young childhood where your inner world felt scary or unsafe, or like you had to hide it from people. And because of that acute feeling, you actually dove into like understanding how all of this works, creating language for like what's going on inside, and maybe even some hyperfixation around those topics. And it could also be things of like, because Scorpio or Pluto also rules like power, money, things like that, you may have felt powerless in those areas. It also rules sexuality. You may have felt like you were disconnected from your sexuality, or who you were sexually was unaccepted on your culture. And so you just did whichever one of those wounds you're like, oh, that one is it. That's the one. Perhaps with the Pluto retrograde, you were like, I have to understand on a cellular level why this is going on, why this happened, where is this, like you want to be, you will have known that you needed to go to the dark places and to understand what was going on there so that you could integrate the awareness and move through into healing. Because remember, Pluto is about transformation. Pluto is about going through the birth, death, rebirth cycle. And so those are things that you, as a Pluto retrograde, likely did early. I think that if you have Pluto retrograde, the likelihood that you were called an old soul goes way up. Way, way, way up. What else about Pluto retrograde? I think there's also the possibility of having had to do a lot of emotional work, getting in touch with your own emotions, allowing your emotions to actually exist and to be aware of them. I think naming emotions is probably something that you learned, like, I wouldn't say like by the time you were 10, but because this is deep stuff, but by the time that you may have had any type of agency, snoring puppy, any type of agency, then you were like, I've got to understand this. I got to learn what this is all about and going after it. Okay. Let me know. Let me know if you have Pluto retrograde and how that may have affected you, if you're willing to share. Okay. Let's go into Saturn retrograde. Love a good Saturn retrograde. So, Saturn is about structure, systems. It often represents the father. Um, I anyway, retrograde Saturn is going to be somebody who like really struggled with systems, maybe feels like chronically disorganized, or felt like they could not pursue what they wanted to, or like the path that they wanted to go down is unclear, that there's not like or there's just a sense of like how to get from A to B feels vague, and structure feels elusive. Systems are like, where's the one that works for me? And so if you have Saturn retrograde, the chances of you being one of the people who like has tried every like planning system available seems quite high, because it's like, it's like feeling like you can't get your life together. Now with Saturn retrograde, I think you absolutely do experience this early on in life, but because Saturn is about time, development, self-mastery over like longer periods of time, I don't always see a Saturn retrograde being a strength that you developed early. I think it happens closer to maybe mid-20s, early 30s, that time frame, because Saturn takes time. And this is whether it's retrograde or not. But it does mean that you are very, 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 very aware of the importance of systems and how they are also elusive to you, and how like trying to find the one that works for you. I do sometimes see with a Saturn retrograde that there could be some wounds around the father dynamic. I don't always see it. But I do sometimes see it. Especially if I see like Saturn in the fourth house kind of stuff. But that's just something to that those sorts of things are usually things that like when I'm doing a chart, I can get some intuitive reads on. And it's not always just like, if you have this placement in this, house, then this is what happened to you in childhood. Like, no, there's like, your chart gives me an energy. Your chart starts telling me things when I start reading it. Boy, I hope I don't sound too crazy. Okay, so I think Saturn retrograde people are also really good at pattern finding. Like something about how their brain works is like being able to like start seeing how things connect in order to get from A to B, because again, having to rely on something else other than like the perfect system, because it's not like, it's a little elusive to them. Also having to learn the importance of discipline and having to learn the importance of structure without like Saturn retrogrades often like go to extremes with systems. Like either they're like all in on this one system until they burn out, and then they just like, you know what, F the systems. Like, we don't need a structure. This is the person who might very easily have a morning routine that does not work for them, but they are going to stick to it because it had better work for them and it works for everybody else. And then they'll do it for X amount of time until it's like they can't do it anymore because it's not working for them. And then they're like, you know what, screw all the systems. I'm not going to have any morning routine. And those are the sorts of lessons that a Saturn retrograde tends to learn. But what I do see with Saturn retrograde is that these people become incredibly good at being able to find and nuance systems for their own lives that actually work for them, and then help other people bust out of systems that don't work for them into ones, and to help them nuance, to ask the right questions, to be able to help them figure out the right structure, the right system, the right discipline for them to follow. So let me know if you have Saturn retrograde, if any of that tracked. Ooh, I should also say, sometimes Saturn retrogrades feel like their career takes longer to start. Sorry. Okay, let's do Neptune. Neptune retrograde. So Neptune is about ideals, dreams, hopes, like connection to the divine, spirituality. When I see Neptune retrograde, I see somebody who might get stuck in ideals, somebody who at a very young age probably had a very vivid imagination or was totally disconnected. So somebody who either like was head in the clouds, or somebody who couldn't and like use their imagination and all, that they had a wound around it. And again, a lot of times when I see for retrogrades is like just an extra opportunity to find balance, to find the strength of that particular part of yourself, because that's what I think the retrograde is here to offer. And so I think I see more often than not Neptune retrograde is the heads in the clouds situation, unless there's something else going on in your chart that tells a different story, but that's usually what I see. And if that person got shamed or internalized a shameful narrative around that, then they disconnect themselves from any ideals, any dreams, any fantasies. And what they're here to do and learn is how to integrate the ideals into life in a way that's actually accessible and embodied. So it's not being cut off from your dreams. It's not staying in La La Land. It's about being able to meld these two things together. And I think that Neptune retrograde, these are things that you're here, that you have this natural ability to do more than people who might not have a Neptune retrograde. I just think that a Neptune retrograde, these are the types of people who have a very vivid inner emotional fantasy world. I would not be surprised if Sarah J. Maas, who is the author of the ACOTAR Romantasy series, does not have a Neptune retrograde, but then did the work at a young age where she was able to utilize all of that rich fantasy world and bring it and offer it to us. Yay, we're so thankful. Okay. I think that these are for the slower moving planets. So Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, all of these lessons are going to happen a little bit more slowly. I think that they still happen for people who have a retrograde. The lessons are more acute, and you get to learn how to really get strong in that area in ways that people without the retrograde don't have the same life path for. But I do think that it happens a little bit. It takes a little longer for these slower moving planets for all of that to become actuated in your life. Is that a word? Probably not. So if you have Neptune retrograde, what I would say is that you're here to have that access to that deep, emotional, rich fantasy dream world, and to also find ways to embody it. And I also think that there's a good possibility that you got shamed about having such a rich inner world. Just notice that if you've cut yourself off from it, that's also like life will not feel like it flows until, as I read charts, what I think is happening is that you're here to embody and embrace all of the parts of you. And you just get an extra oomph of having to learn this particular lesson of embodying the ideals and the dreams in a way where you aren't sacrificing your life. So like what can happen with a Neptune retrograde is like you don't live because everything's not ideal enough, nothing's perfect enough, nothing is as sweet and as amazing as the dream. Or you cut yourself off from all of the dreams and you just live efficiently. And like, no, we need both. And you need both. And that's lovely and wonderful, and we love that. So, okay. I have not yet done a video on Ceres. It's coming up. I believe that Ceres is the ruler of Taurus. Yeah. And I was just going to see when it goes retrograde. Yeah. Okay. So when Ceres, I read Ceres as like, as the ruler of Taurus in the second house, this is how you, if you need to know like what self-care looks like for you, like on a really like nurturing, like taking care of your world, your body, making you feel safe, making you feel like well-resourced, all of that's going to be Ceres type of things. Like if you want to look at how to take care of your nervous system and nurturing yourself that way and making sure you have a sense of belonging, emotional belonging, you want to go check out where your moon is. I've done a video on that. If you want to know how to feel safe and nurtured in terms of resources, in terms of the physical world, in terms of feeling abundant, go check where your Ceres is. And again, I will do a video on that soon. But Ceres retrograde is essentially somebody who feels at a young age that there's a block to abundance or a block to being able to take care of themselves. There may be like an actual sense of like not having agency over being able to create the life that they want in the physical world. So all of those things are going to be something that you develop at a younger age and are more aware of at a younger age, so that, like, I think that if you have Ceres retrograde, that you might be one of the people who really starts to understand why manifesting works, or really starts to understand like, okay, if I want to get there, I have to do these things. And it's not like in a Capricorn way. Like a Capricorn can sometimes like, I'm going to be diligent, I'm going to be dutiful, I'm going to follow this path. But sometimes they'll follow the path even if they're not getting the results. I think Ceres is like, we need the results. We need to taste good food. We need to feel like cozy now. There's some more instant gratification type of things. And it doesn't mean that they're not willing to work hard or not willing to sacrifice. They just need a quicker return than a Capricorn might. So for a Ceres retrograde, any kind of narrative, or if I see this in your chart, what I'm going to say is that like you may have experienced a lack of abundance and resources, and it may not have been for your whole childhood. It may have been just like this acute moment where it was like it hits you like real hard of, oh, I need to make sure that I have enough. And that's just going to be something that's more of a focus point for you. And I do think that a part of your life journey is about finding your alignment, your inner narrative with what does abundance mean for you, what does a healthy relationship with abundance and resources and self-care, all of those sorts of things, like what is that for you? And again, if you go and look and see where it is in your chart, like if your Ceres is in Aries, your abundance, your sense of natural abundance is going to be related to your sense of being able to try and fail and get back up and do it again, and knowing that failure is actually part of the success. And also like your spark of life is going to be connected to your sense of abundance. And so making sure that you have a narrative that says who I am is allowed to experience abundance is going to be really, really important if your Ceres is in Aries or the first house. But you can go and you can look at like the kind of inner narrative you're here to develop by looking at where your Ceres is in your chart. And again, I'll be doing that video soon. All right. Yeah, making sure that you have a real focus on creating a positive inner narrative around abundance. And here's the thing. A lot of times when I do a reading and I start sharing this stuff, I get feedback afterwards from people that it's like, oh yeah, I did do that. Like a lot of times people with retrogrades, it's like the lesson was so big, so early that they had to face it. And by the time they're getting a reading from me, this is already something that they've developed. So that's just something like that's often what I see with retrogrades. Like this, a lot of times I look at retrogrades as like a part of your superpower, which I love. But I will say that if it's something, and been there, done that, if it's something that you resist learning, which sometimes retrogrades can do, like a lot of times there's a lot of shame around the retrograde stuff. A lot of like feeling like you should already be good at it, or like, why is this not happening for me? What's wrong with me? Those sorts of things are very prominent with retrograde situations. So sometimes it does take longer for us to access the healing part of the retrograde. And so I just think that you probably are further along than you think, because that energy of the retrograde situation, I think, remains, even though we tend to get really strong in that area. So that's just a nuance to be aware of. All right. Let's do Uranus. Another video I haven't done yet. I think Ceres and Uranus are the last two. I'm so excited about that. That's so cool. So Uranus is the planet of invention, technology, of uniqueness, of being able to understand that what you offer is valuable to the collective, and that we're all here to embrace our uniqueness. And by doing that, we form a better collective. It's like the planet of diversity. And I'll be sharing this in the video I do, but it's like the planet of like shaking stuff up. Like you don't want the status quo. You don't want, you're pushing boundaries. Uranus is trend setting. It's like, let's disrupt. It's the rebellion planet, right? It's the leather jacket, rebellious planet of all of your placements. And so it's like here to not settle for what isn't working. It's here to create something better with your unique perspective. So depending on where Uranus is in your chart, those are the qualities. But if it's retrograde, two things. One, chances are that you felt disconnected or disempowered to do that. Something along like, I cannot be unique and be a part of the community or the collective, or my uniqueness is not valuable. Those sorts of narratives are things that you likely had to face when you were younger. Also, like, you couldn't help it. Like, you are going to be unique and different. And go look at where your Uranus is. It will show you the area that you were going to be unique and different. You couldn't help it. That's the thing about retrogrades. I think that it's like, it ends up being the energy we have to embrace. And Uranus is like, yeah, we're going to be different. And that's just going to have to be the way it is. And so really what I see more often with Uranus retrograde is not somebody who didn't embrace their uniqueness, but rather who still has some difficulties with feeling like their uniqueness is also valuable. Those are more the lessons that I tend to see in the charts with Uranus retrograde. But again, you're here to create something unique. You are here to create and provide something that is just like your unique fingerprint. And whatever that is, it's here to elevate humanity, whether it's like an energetic ripple effect, whether it's healing generational trauma. Like, there is something that is just yours to do. And when you embrace your Uranus planet, that part of you, that's when I think life can kind of get sizzly and exciting. Like, if your life feels a little dull, go check out your Uranus placement. Be on the lookout for the video that I'm going to do, because it's going to share with you how you can shake things up. Uranus is like the glass ceiling breaker. That's the part of you that's like, you know what, this isn't working. We've got to rebel and do something different. And if it's retrograde, then chances are you felt very rebellious very young, or you felt very you probably felt it. You probably felt it. But there's also a likelihood that you also had to suppress it in order to have connection, in order to belong. Or if you didn't suppress it, you did feel disconnect. And what you're here to show us is that you are absolutely here to be unique, and show us how as all of us embrace that unique quality, that we better the world at large. Yes, I can't wait to do the Uranus video. That's going to be so fun. What else do I want to say about this? I think that's good for now. You can let me know. Let me know if your Uranus is retrograde, how you have accidentally been a trendsetter at some point. Okay. Let's see what's next. And going through the list. And there we have it. We've gone through all of them. All right, let me know what resonated. How many retrogrades do you have? Do you feel like that childhood part made sense, that you had to learn those lessons pretty young and now it's kind of like a strength you almost have? And also, do you feel like it's still something that you get stuck on from time to time? So I have, for example, I have 4 retrograde planets. Yeah, 4. And all of them are ones that I absolutely feel like they are superpowers for me, and that I still feel like I have this nagging sense that I'm behind in those areas, or that I should know more, or that I should be better in those specific areas. So yeah, I would love to hear what your story is, what your experience is. And yeah, be on the lookout too for the Chiron, or I'm sorry, the Ceres and Uranus videos. Those will be the last 2 to wrap up the going through the placements in your chart. If you're interested, I also have a guide that I put together if you want to go through your chart the way that I go through people's charts, at least like as a foundational starting point. And I'll have that in the description down below if you want a reading from me. Love, love, love to do the readings. And I have lots of different types of readings. So I'll have my website down below. If you found this valuable, interesting, entertaining, please like, comment, subscribe. Also, if you have any videos that you would like me to do, let me know. If you have any questions, I do plan to do a Q&A video, but all of the questions that I got from you guys, they're so deep. They deserve their own videos. So eventually I'll grab enough questions for good Q&A. So if you have any questions like that, definitely put those in the comments down below. So, all right, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope that you have an amazing day. I hope that you realize that you have super strengths around your retrogrades, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.